Welcome to Shredder Fanfic. Like, subscribe, and hype video. Join members to gain early access to new videos.
The main character, after dying in his previous life, he wakes up inside of Jungle Box as Caesar. What is Caesar gonna do inside of Jungle Box?
Asterisk Chapter 1. Elias holds the line. Rain hammered the windows hard enough to make the office lights tremble. Elias stood over a folding table covered in phones, printed maps, battery packs, and wet coats dropped by people who had stopped pretending they were only staying for an hour. The city emergency line had failed twice. The police scanner spoke in clipped bursts about flooded avenues, stalled ambulances, empty pharmacies, and a shelter generator that had died with 200 people inside. He crossed out another blocked road with a red marker. "No one uses Mercer," he said. "Water is above the hoods there. Send the South group through the parking deck, then across the service bridge. If the bridge is gone, they turn back. Nobody improvises alone." 3 volunteers stared at him. They were tired, frightened, and waiting for someone else to decide which fear mattered first. Elias hated that look because he understood it. Groups collapsed when every person believed the next voice would carry responsibility for them. He had spent years building supply circles, phone trees, tool lists, and transport plans because chaos did not need evil to win. It only needed people to hesitate in separate rooms. "Say it back," Elias ordered. Mara, a nurse with mud up to her knees, swallowed and pointed to the map. "South group to the parking deck. Service bridge if it holds. Turn back if it does not." "Good. Take 2 radios and the insulin cooler. Omar, you go with her. You keep count before and after every stop." Omar rubbed both hands over his face. "My brother is still on Grant Street." "Then keep count, so I can send someone for him after we move the people who cannot walk." The answer was cruel. It was also the only answer that would keep the room from breaking into private missions. Elias saw anger flash across Omar's face, then shame when he understood the math. One brother mattered. So did the old women sitting in water at the church basement. So did the children at the daycare whose parents could not reach them through the flooded streets. The radio snapped with static. A man's voice came through thin and shaking. "Civic shelter to base. We have smoke in the west stairwell. Repeat, smoke in the west stairwell. Generator room door is jammed." Everyone looked at Elias. He closed his eyes for 1 second, long enough to build the order in his head. Mara moves the medical group now. Omar goes with her. Priya stays on phones. I'm going to the shelter. "You cannot," Priya said. "The underpass is flooded." "Then I will take the maintenance road." "That road is under evacuation order." "That is why it is empty." Omar stood so quickly his chair scraped backward. "Let me go. You said my brother is next." "Your brother needs a working chain more than he needs one desperate man in the water," Elias said. He pointed to the radio log. "If you leave, Mara loses transport. If Mara loses transport, the insulin spoils. If the insulin spoils, 6 people die before morning. You want to save your brother. Keep the chain alive long enough for me to send the next truck." The cruelty of the numbers landed in the room. Elias saw it move from face to face, turning panic into shape. He had never wanted to be loved in moments like this. Love made people argue. A clear order made them move. No one laughed. Elias grabbed a crowbar, a flashlight, and the old canvas go bag he kept under the table. He stopped at the door and looked back at them. They needed certainty more than comfort. Comfort would make them soft. Certainty would make them move. "No shouting," he said. "No heroics. You follow the list. If I do not call in 20 minutes, Priya takes command. If Priya loses contact, Mara takes command. If Mara loses contact, Omar takes command. The system does not die because one person does." The maintenance road had already become a river by the time he reached it. Water slapped against the truck doors. Trash cans floated past like black boys. Twice he had to stop, climb out, and shove branches away from the grill while rain struck the back of his neck hard enough to sting. The civic shelter rose out of the storm with half its windows dark. People crowded behind the glass. He could see faces turn toward the smoke curling behind them. They were not screaming yet. That meant there was still a chance. A security guard met him at the side entrance with a bleeding forehead and a ring of keys that shook too badly to find the right lock. Elias took the keys, chose the utility door, and shoved the guard toward the lobby. Count people by rows. Put anyone who can carry a child on the right wall. Anyone who cannot walk goes by the desk. You do not leave the desk until someone else has the count. I am not in charge here, the guard said. You are now. The man went pale, then nodded. Elias watched him straighten because an assigned duty was sometimes stronger than courage. Inside, the west stairwell smelled of hot plastic and trapped air. Elias wrapped his shirt over his mouth, drove the crowbar into the warped generator room door, and pulled until his shoulder burned. The first gap coughed smoke into his face. He heard coughing below, then a child's thin cry from the landing. Back from the stairs, he shouted. Single line, hands on shoulders, move when I say move. The door gave with a metal shriek. Heat rolled out. Elias found the generator sparking against standing water and understood the shape of the disaster at once. The shut-off lever was inside the room. The water was climbing. The stairwell was filling. If he waited for firefighters, the line behind him would panic and crush itself. He tied the flashlight to the railing and pointed it down the stairs. Follow the light, no running. The first group moved, then the second. He counted by shoulders, by heads, by the small hands gripping adult sleeves. Smoke clawed at his throat. The lever was 6 steps inside the generator room, half hidden behind a fallen shelf. He could reach it if he stepped into the water. A woman on the stairs turned back for a canvas bag. Elias caught her sleeve and shoved the bag toward another volunteer without opening it. People before things, he said. The woman tried to argue. The lights flared again, and the argument died in her mouth. He kept counting. 43, 44, 45. Counts mattered because memory lied under terror. A room could feel empty with a child under a desk. A stairwell could feel cleared with an old man sitting in smoke because no one wanted to slow the line. Elias forced each face into a number and each number into the next order. Priya's voice crackled from the radio on his belt. Elias, report. He looked down the stairwell. The last child was still there, frozen halfway up, coughing too hard to move. Elias went back, lifted the boy under one arm, and shoved him toward a volunteer at the doorway. Take him. What about you? Take him. The volunteer obeyed. That was leadership in its final, barest form. Make the order simple enough that fear could not argue with it. Elias stepped into the generator room. Water climbed over his boots. Sparks spat blue-white against the wall. He hooked the crowbar under the shelf, heaved it aside, and threw his weight onto the shut-off lever. The lever resisted. Elias planted one foot against the generator housing, felt current prickle through the wet sole, and pulled harder. His shoulder slipped in its socket with a bright pulse of pain. He thought of the maps on the folding table, of Omar still there because the chain had held, of Priya taking command if he did not answer. If the chain held after him, then the work had been real. That was enough. It had to be enough. No order could ask more. For one breath, nothing happened. Then the generator died. The lights went black. The smoke fans stopped. The shelter behind him erupted in coughing, crying, and movement, but the stairwell no longer glowed with electrical fire. Elias smiled, because the system had held. The ceiling beam cracked above him. He looked up only in time to see wet plaster, metal, and darkness fall together. Pain hit once, enormous and white. The radio kept spitting his name from somewhere under the water. He tried to answer, but his chest would not move. His last thought was not fear. It was fury at how fragile a group became when no one built walls before the flood came. Build something that survives, he thought. Then the storm swallowed the room. Priya took command 12 minutes after Elias left. She hated him for making the transition easy. The room had expected his absence to become another emergency. Instead, the lists were already divided. Mara's route was marked. Omar knew which radio belonged to the medical group. The names of the shelter contacts were written in block letters beside their frequencies. No one had to ask what came next. Priya stood where Elias had stood. South Group checks in every 5 minutes, she said. No one changes route without saying why. Her voice shook on the first sentence. It did not shake on the second. Omar looked toward the door twice. The third time, Priya said, "He told you what your job is." Omar's jaw tightened. "My brother." "I know." That answer was softer than Elias would have given. It still kept him in the room. The radio from the civic shelter crackled. Someone shouted about smoke. Someone else said children were moving. Then Elias' voice cut through once, harsh and breathless, ordering them to use the east lobby. Priya wrote the instruction down. A minute later, the line went dead. No one stopped. That was the part Elias had wanted, even if he would never see it. Mara reached the clinic with the insulin cooler intact. Omar counted 6 vulnerable patients out and 6 in. The South Group found the service bridge damaged and turned back exactly as instructed instead of gambling on the crossing. They cursed Elias the entire detour and lived. At the folding table, Priya kept moving names from one column to another. Safe. Unknown. Moving. Injured. She refused to write dead without confirmation. The city emergency line returned at 2:17 a.m. By then, their improvised network had already routed 3 ambulances around Mercer, moved medicine between 2 shelters, and found Omar's brother through a church contact who still had a working landline. Omar heard his brother's voice and sat down so hard the chair tipped. Priya let him cry for 30 seconds. Then she handed him the next radio. "Your route is still active." He nodded. At dawn, firefighters reached the civic shelter. They found 200 people in the parking lot, organized by rows, because a bleeding security guard had kept counting even after the lights died. They found the generator room collapsed. They found the crowbar. They found Elias last. Priya was still at the folding table when the message reached her. She put the radio down carefully. No one in the room spoke. The silence wanted to become collapse. Priya looked at the wall. Elias' chain was written there. If I do not call, Priya. If Priya loses contact, Mara. If Mara loses contact, Omar. It seemed obscene that the list still worked. That was also why she stood. Who has Grant Street? A volunteer swallowed. I do. Then go. The room moved again. The storm did not care who had died. Neither did the people waiting for medicine. Priya hated Elias for understanding that. She loved him for building around it. By evening, the city had enough official responders back online that the folding table network could shrink. People went home or to shelters. Mara returned with dried mud up to her thighs and blood on one sleeve that was not hers. She looked at Elias' empty chair. Did it hold? Priya nodded. Yes. Mara covered her face. The volunteers did not hold a ceremony that night. They were too tired. They stacked the radios, labeled the batteries, updated the road map for the morning shift even though no one wanted another shift. Priya found Elias' red marker, uncapped beside the map. She capped it. Then she wrote one final note at the bottom of the command sheet. If the person in charge disappears, the work continues. Nobody signed it. Nobody needed to. Weeks later, the city emergency office asked for a copy of the system they had used. Priya sent the ugly version. Crossed out roads. Coffee stains. Names written over names. No polished manual. The official who received it asked whether they could clean it before filing. Priya said no. The mess was part of the evidence. The system had not been elegant. It had survived. 3 months after the flood, Priya received a city commendation and refused it. The official looked confused. It recognizes volunteer coordination. Then put the names of the volunteers on it. We can add them. And the shelter guard. Of course. And Elias. The official paused. He is being recognized separately. Priya hated separate recognition. It turned the dead person into a different category from the living system. She insisted. The final plaque listed 23 names and one line about the emergency network. No heroic title. That suited. Mara visited Elias' mother with the old command sheet. She had not known whether to bring. The woman read. The handwriting was sharp. No sentiment. Roads. Counts. Succession order. She touched the line. The system does not die because one person does. He wrote that. Yes. Sounds like him. Mara expected tears. Instead, his mother laughed once. He hated being needed. Mara looked. No, he hated being needed for things other people could learn. Mara's distinction restored more of the person Elias had been. They talked about him as irritating, controlling, reliable, bad at birthdays, good at emergencies. A person, not a sacrifice. The old sheet stayed with family for a week, then returned to the volunteer center archive at his mother's request. If it helps someone, keep it where they work. Priya framed nothing. She laminated a copy and put it beside radios. Months later, a new storm warning came. Not as bad. The center opened. New volunteers arrived who had never met Elias. One pointed at succession chain. Who was this guy? Priya looked at the map. Someone who would be annoyed you're asking, instead of checking batteries. The volunteer checked. The system continued, without memory of the man being necessary. That would have pleased him more than any plaque. The civic shelter guard remembered Elias differently from everyone else. His name was Tomas. For weeks after the flood, people told him the man who had come through smoke had been calm. Tomas knew better. Elias had been scared. His hand had shaken when he took the keys. His voice had cracked once near the generator stair. Calm had been what the orders looked like from outside. That distinction mattered to Tomas. At a volunteer training months later, someone showed a slide about confident emergency leadership and used a still frame from the shelter footage. Tomas raised his hand. He wasn't confident. The trainer stopped. Tomas continued. He checked the wrong key twice. He coughed so hard he had to lean on the wall. He looked at the water like he knew it could kill him. The room shifted. Then why did people follow him? Someone asked. Because he kept giving us things to do that made sense. Not charisma. Not fearlessness. Useful next action. The training changed. Instead of telling volunteers to appear calm, they practiced saying what they knew and what they did not. Smoke in west stair. Exit east. Count before moving. No one alone. The language survived because it did not require a heroic personality. Priya heard later. She sent Tomas a copy of the old command sheet. He framed that one. Not Elias' photograph. The sheet. Years later, when another emergency hit a neighborhood Tomas worked in, he found himself standing in a doorway while 3 people looked at him with the same waiting fear. He remembered the shaking hand. He said, "You call, you count, you stay with him." Then he moved. Elia's legacy did not become a statue. It became other frightened people, learning that fear and function could occupy the same body. Asterisk Chapter 2, 4 and Broken Stone. Caesar woke to teeth, fur and noise. Hands that were not human clenched around wet stone. Fingers were longer, stronger, roughened for branches instead of tools. Black fur clung to his arms in damp clumps. His feet curled against the broken edge of a ruin, gripping without thought. The body knew height. It knew balance. It knew how to spring away from danger before the mind finished naming it. All around him, the bandar logs shrieked. They bounced through the cold layers in a storm of limbs and tails, flinging fruit skins, tugging vines loose from ancient stone, fighting over beetles, laughing at nothing, forgetting the fight before the loser hit the ground. A young monkey leapt over Caesar's head and nearly kicked him in the face. Another grabbed a cracked pot, wore it like a crown, and fell backward into a puddle while 5 others screamed approval. Caesar crouched on the ledge and stared. The ruins should have been a fortress. Broken walls, high platforms, narrow approaches, hidden corners where stores could be kept dry, stone heavy enough to stop claws and teeth if someone had the will to stack it. Instead, the place was a nest for noise. No memory, no watch, no food order, no signal that meant danger before danger arrived. A monkey shoved past him and stole the half-rotten fruit near his foot. Caesar caught the thief by the wrist. The smaller monkey screamed at once, not in pain, but because screaming was the first language of this troop. Caesar tightened his grip until the sound cracked. The monkey froze. Others looked over, lost interest, looked back, then looked again when Caesar did not join the noise. He raised his free hand and pressed one finger against his own mouth. Silence. The sign came from somewhere deeper than memory. It felt carved into the bones of the new body. A hand shape, a command, a way to speak when voices would betray the troop. Caesar repeated it slowly, then released the thief and pointed to the ground. Stay. The monkey did not understand the sign, but it understood the eyes. It crouched where it had been placed and trembled. Caesar stood upright. The movement pulled strange muscles across his back and hips. The troop saw it. That mattered. Bandar log could climb and swing, but they did not stand like rulers. They did not hold still while the world screamed around them. A thick-shouldered male on a broken pillar barked laughter and threw a mango pit at him. Caesar tilted his head. The pit passed close enough to brush fur. The male bared his teeth as if the challenge had already been answered by noise. Caesar picked up the mango pit, weighed it in his palm, and threw it back. It struck the male between the eyes. The laughter stopped. Not everywhere, not yet. But in the small ring around Caesar, the cold layers heard a new thing, consequence. He climbed down from the ledge. The body moved beautifully once he trusted it. Knuckles touched stone. Feet found cracks. Fingers closed around vines with clean certainty. He crossed the courtyard without rushing and studied the troop as a builder studies rotten timber. Too many bodies to waste. Too much energy without channel. Too much fear hiding under play. A child monkey reached for his fur. Caesar caught the hand gently, turned the palm upward, and drew a line across it with one claw. Not enough to cut, enough to mark. He tapped the line, then pointed to the child. He tapped his own chest, then pointed to the ground between them. You here, see? The child blinked. Then awkwardly it copied the tap. Caesar's breath slowed. There was something there, not discipline, not loyalty, but imitation, a seed. He spent the rest of the morning testing it. Palm down meant stop. 2 fingers toward the eyes meant watch. A fist against the chest meant me. A pointed hand toward fallen fruit meant bring. Most failed. Some laughed. 2 forgot halfway through and ran after a lizard. 1 young female brought the fruit, set it down, and waited for the next sign. Caesar gave her the fruit first. The others noticed, that more than they noticed punishment. By sunset, only 6 monkeys remained within reach of him, 6 out of the chattering swarm. It was a pathetic beginning. It was also enough. Every wall began with the first stone that did not roll away. The thick-shouldered male watched from the broken pillar, rubbing the bruise between his eyes. His followers gathered around him. Loud again now, that distance made them brave. Caesar gathered the 6 at the base of a fallen statue and made them repeat the signs until their fingers cramped. Stop, watch, bring, stay. Each sign had a place in the body, palm flat, eyes sharp, hand closed, feet still. The smallest monkey forgot twice and reached for a moth. Caesar took the fruit away both times. On the third attempt, the small hand stayed in place. Night insects sang around the ruins. The troop's old noise rose again in far corners, but it did not cover the little pocket of quiet at Caesar's feet. That mattered. A kingdom did not begin with walls. It began with a space where command could survive long enough to be copied. He chose a dry alcove above the courtyard for the 6 and pushed loose stones across its entrance. Not a wall yet, a line. A crude border between those who had answered his signs and those still sleeping in heaps wherever they grew tired. The 6 watched him move the stones, then began helping without being told. Caesar let them. Reward could be more dangerous than punishment if given too freely, but this was not softness. It was proof. Work beside the king, eat beside the king, sleep where claws could not reach so easily. The rest of the Bandar log would notice by morning. A vine snapped above the courtyard. 3 monkeys shrieked and ran in circles because a fruit bundle had fallen from a ledge. Caesar did not move toward them. He made the 6 stay still instead. Their instincts fought him. Shoulders twitched, lips peeled back, feet wanted to leap. One by one, the small bodies locked into place. Only after they held did Caesar point. Watch! The 6 looked. The shouting monkeys below fought over the fallen fruit, bit one another, and forgot the broken vine that had nearly struck 2 of them. Caesar pointed to the vine, then to the fruit, then to the bleeding fools. Cause, result, waste. The young female who had brought fruit earlier touched 2 fingers to her eyes. Watch. It was not perfect, but it was hers. Caesar gave her the first clean piece from the bundle and let the others see why she had earned it. He slept little that night. The body wanted the comfort of branches, curled limbs, and troop warmth. Caesar refused the heap. He crouched at the alcove entrance with his back against stone and listened to the old Bandar log noise rise and fall. In that noise, he heard raw material. Before dawn, a civet slipped along the outer stones and froze when it saw him awake. Caesar smelled its musk before he understood the shape in the dark. His new body reacted with a low, warning rumble. The 6 behind him stirred. He lifted one hand without turning. Stay. They stayed. The civet fled. Caesar listened to the leaves close behind it and understood another weakness in the troop he had inherited. They slept as if the jungle forgave foolishness. No guard, no count, no sign passed from watcher to watcher. A predator did not need strength to kill such creatures. It only needed patience. He scratched a line into the stone beside the alcove entrance. One mark for the first group, another for the empty space where a watcher should stand. The 6 did not know numbers yet, but they watched the claw move. That was enough for the morning. Marks could become counts. Counts could become stores, patrols, punishments, walls. When the sun rose, the 6 were hungry and stiff from sleeping apart from the troop. Caesar gave them fruit before the others. The thick-shouldered male on the pillar saw it, bared his teeth, and shouted for the old way. Caesar looked up slowly. The first challenge had found its shape. The body wanted to bear teeth back. Caesar chose stillness instead. Stillness frightened the Bandar log more than rage, because rage was familiar and stillness meant a thought had survived long enough to become a weapon. Thought would rule noise next. Caesar looked at them, then at the ruins, then at the 6 monkeys waiting with fruit juice on their hands and fear in their eyes. He signed silence again. This time, 6 hands copied him. The 6 monkeys learned Caesar's first rules faster, when the rules produced something they wanted. Shelter. The dry alcove had room for 8 bodies, if no one sprawled. That fact created the first argument. A 7th monkey, older than the others, and not part of Caesar's original group, tried to climb inside at dusk. Raku blocked him with both arms. The stranger shrieked. 3 monkeys from the old troop answered from across the courtyard. Caesar did not let the noise decide. He pointed to the alcove, then to the loose stones at the entrance. Work! The stranger stared. Caesar lifted one stone and placed it against the wall. The stranger understood enough. He carried 2. Then another. Raku objected with a sharp bark. Caesar looked at him. The alcove was not a reward for loyalty alone. If it became that, the first 6 would turn every useful thing into private privilege. He signed. Work. Stay. Raku's shoulders lowered. The newcomer carried until his hands were grey with dust. At night, he was allowed inside. No ceremony. The rule had changed from the 6 sleep dry to those who help maintain the shelter may use it while space remains. The new rule kept the first 6 from turning the shelter into a private privilege. For now it mattered, because Raku spent half the night glaring at the 7th body. Caesar let him. Resentment was cheaper than a fight. The next morning, the alcove smelled terrible. Too many bodies. No drainage. Fruit peels in one corner. Caesar made everyone leave. The monkeys complained, loudly enough to wake half the ruins. He did not reopen the space until they cleared it. The youngest female copied him without being told, dragging peels into a cracked pot. Caesar gave her first access when the floor was clean. The troop noticed. By midday, 3 monkeys were collecting refuse from nearby ledges because they had understood shelter came with maintenance. Caesar had not planned sanitation as his first civic institution. The ruins had other ideas. He found a shallow trench where rainwater could carry waste away from the sleeping area. The body knew how to dig with hands better than he expected, but stone roots made work slow. The monkeys joined. Some for shelter, some because everyone else had. One because Caesar was digging. That last motive bothered him. He did not want labor to exist only because the leader touched the ground. So after the trench began, he left. He climbed the opposite wall and watched. Half the workers stopped. 2 continued. The young female continued longest. Caesar returned only after the line between imitation and choice had become visible. He gave her a strip of red vine. Not rank yet. A marker. The troop began calling her Sura in the days that followed, a name already used among them, but rarely attached to responsibility. Caesar learned it by listening. He did not rename her. Names were one of the few things the Bandar log remembered for reasons not entirely random. At noon, Sura brought him 3 rotten fruits from a hidden cache. She pointed at a male sleeping under a ledge. The food had been hoarded. Caesar looked. Punishment could wait. Before deciding punishment, Caesar needed to know why the male had hidden the food. The answer came through gestures and angry chatter. He had 3 younger siblings. He did not trust the central pile. There was no central pile yet. No system to trust. Caesar could punish theft from a rule that did not exist. Or build the rule. He took only 1 fruit. Returned 2. Then gathered food in visible baskets before the troop. The hoarder watched. Caesar touched basket. Then his own chest. Then everyone. Shared. The male looked unconvinced. Trust should not appear because Caesar signed at it. It would have to survive several hungry days. The first day, the basket was stolen. The second, it was raided. The third, Caesar assigned 2 watchers. By the 5th, The troop had begun placing damaged fruit in one basket and clean fruit in another without being told. The ruins were changing through boring acts no jungle story would ever celebrate. Drainage, sleeping space, rotten food, watch turns. Caesar found those acts more reassuring than Koro's silence after the mango pit. Power could make one monkey stop laughing. Routine could make 20 monkeys wake under a roof that had not collapsed. At sunset, Caesar climbed the highest ledge and looked down. The old troop still shrieked. Stole. Forgot. But one small corner of the cold lairs contained a swept floor, a drainage trench, a covered basket, and 7 sleeping bodies that knew why they were there. The first wall had not been stone. It had been a rule that survived until morning. Caesar's new body carried instincts he did not trust. When a baby monkey screamed, his attention snapped automatically. When an adult male bared teeth, his shoulders tightened. When fruit smell drifted past, hunger moved before thought. The instincts were not enemies. They were information. But he refused to let them become orders. He tested this privately. A branch high above the courtyard. The body wanted leap. He waited, measured, then jumped deliberately. The distance was farther than any human body could manage. His hands caught. For 1 second, he hung over open stone. The joy was immediate and animal. Caesar climbed. He had spent so much of waking trying to discipline the troop that he had almost treated the body itself as another unruly subject. That was wrong. He spent an hour moving through ruins without purpose. Climbing, swinging, dropping, learning. No audience. No command. The body was not Elias' old body wearing fur. It had its own competence. Caesar learned to trust balance, grip, tail, shoulder rotation. This made him more dangerous later. It also made him less alien to himself. At one point, he landed beside 3 young monkeys playing. They froze, expecting correction. Caesar looked at their vine. They looked at him. He jumped onto it. The vine swung too far. He crashed into leaves. The children screamed laughter. Caesar climbed out, with dignity damaged. He did not punish. One child copied his failed jump and fell into mud. More laughter. For 5 minutes, he joined. Then stopped when vine began fraying. He showed. The children touched fibers. Game ended before injury. Pleasure and caution could coexist. Caesar began allowing body knowledge into training. Not every movement must be rigid. Monkeys were better climbers, were not forced to imitate his exact path. He set outcome. Reach branch silently. Each monkey could choose a different route as long as the landing stayed quiet. Different bodies found different solutions. The first 6 became less like copies, more capable. Elias had valued systems, but Caesar could not build civilization by turning every person into identical procedure. The body taught him before politics did. The 7th monkey in the dry alcove eventually left. His name was Parco. He had worked enough to earn shelter, but hated Caesar's stillness. Every correction felt like a cage. One morning, he carried his share of fruit to the wall and pointed outward. Leave. Caesar understood. The rule about departure had not been formal yet. The unfinished departure rule left one immediate question, whether Parco could take food. The old troop would say no. Food belonged whoever remained strong enough to hold. Caesar gave him 2 days' worth. Not the whole store. Enough to make leaving a choice, rather than immediate starvation. Sura objected. He leave work. Yes. Then fruit. Because he was part until now. Parko took. The other 6 watched. Some looked tempted. Caesar let them. If civilization required inability to leave, it was captivity with better drains. Parko disappeared into jungle. A week later, one of the original 6 left too. Then returned before sunset, terrified by leopard scent. Caesar did not mock. The wall reopened. The monkey slept. Leaving was not treason. Returning, not humiliation. Parko remained gone for a month. When he returned, he had a torn ear and 2 new monkeys following. He stopped at the edge. No automatic entry. He had left obligations. He asked. Caesar required public rules accepted again. Parko did. The 2 newcomers worked entry tasks. All 3 entered. The troop learned membership could have doors both directions. That made the wall psychologically different. Not just keeping danger out. Allowing people to choose in. Asterisk Chapter 3, Numbers Without Memory. 3 days after the first alcove was claimed, a young male crossed a vine bridge because it had held his weight the day before. The bridge broke beneath him. Caesar dragged him out of the dust and listened as 3 different monkeys gave 3 incompatible versions of who had last inspected the vines. The cold layers did not lack eyes, hands, or warnings. It lacked a way for yesterday's knowledge to remain present after the speaker became hungry, distracted, frightened, or dead. Caesar chose the dry cistern as the first place to test whether a fact could survive the mind that discovered it. The marks beside the cistern became the first thing Caesar could trust after everyone forgot why they were there. 3 white stones. 1 red leaf. A scratched line in the wall. By the 4th day, nobody remembered the original demonstration. Sura did remember the rule. If moved, put back. Her speech was still rough, more signs than words. Caesar pointed at the stones. Why? Sura looked angry at the question. Because, Count. The answer was rough, but sufficient. He changed the arrangement deliberately. Moved 1 stone. Sura noticed before anyone else. She put it back. Then stopped. Looked at Caesar. Realized he had tested her. Her lips pulled back. Bad. Caesar almost smiled. Yes. A system that could be challenged had begun. He gave her permission to test him next. She did not understand at first. Then, during food count, Sura removed 1 fig while his back was turned. Caesar counted. He recounted. Still wrong. Sura held the fig behind her back. He saw the angle of her shoulder. She revealed it. The 6 laughed. Caesar accepted. You watch me too. That sentence spread badly. By evening, 3 monkeys were stealing things to test. Caesar stopped them. Not every disruption was oversight. They needed boundaries. Sura had been assigned a test. Others had not. The troop learned another difficult idea. Permission mattered even when the act looked identical. Caesar began carving marks for tasks. 1 horizontal line beside a name. Watch. 2 carry. Circle, food. Cross, injured. The monkeys could not read names, so each worker received a personal symbol. Raku got a hooked vine because of the scar on his wrist. Sura chose 3 dots. Children received simple shapes. The wall became ugly. A guard could look and know whether the next watch had arrived. A carrier could see whose basket was missing. The first mistake happened at night. 2 symbols looked too similar in torchlight. A guard believed he had been relieved and left the tower. No one replaced him. The empty post lasted 20 minutes. Nothing attacked. Caesar still treated it as failure. Not the guards alone. The marks themselves were badly designed. He changed them larger. Sura suggested hanging cords of different knots under the symbols. Tactile, visible in dark. Caesar approved. The guard returned, expecting punishment. Caesar asked, "Did you follow the mark?" "Yes." Then mark failed. The guard stared. He had expected the leader to protect his own system by blaming the user. Caesar knew that habit from another life too well. He broke it early. The next night, a different guard left before relief, even though the new mark was clear. That one was personal failure. Caesar removed his watch cord and assigned him day labor. Different failure. Different consequence. The distinction made the system credible. Visitors noticed the walls and spears first. Caesar noticed the rows of ugly marks beside the cistern, because those marks revealed the empty guard post before a predator did. Caesar would, because the fortress did not begin when stone rose. It began when an absent guard became visible before a predator found the gap. One of the first wall marks became a lie because Caesar forgot to erase it. A black slash meant unsafe stone. The stone was repaired. The slash remained. For 2 days, workers walked around the stable section and crowded a narrower path. No one questioned. The mark had authority because Caesar made it. Sura eventually touched the stone. Safe. Caesar looked at Slash. He removed. Then gathered workers. Marks can be wrong. This statement disturbed more than expected. The troop had been learning that marks solved forgetting. Now the mark itself could fail. Caesar showed process. Check old warning. If condition changed, update. If unsure, ask. A young monkey asked whether Caesar's own signs could be wrong. Yes. The answer produced nervous laughter. He repeated. Yes. From then, every permanent-looking mark had a small space beside for correction notch. Anyone could place question notch. Only a trained keeper could remove the notch or change the warning after an inspection. The first question notch appeared beside food path the next morning. The first question notch proved harmless. A child thought one stone had loosened, but an inspection showed the wall was stable. No punishment for asking. The second found real crack. The system improved because people could challenge symbols without needing challenge king personally. Caesar saw the distinction. Institutions can make disagreement less dangerous by moving it toward objects and evidence. The Bandarlog had once solved every conflict with noise. Now one tiny notch could stop work. That was civilization too. Asterisk Chapter 4, The First Silent Hands. Caesar discovered that silence could travel farther than a shout. He took the 6 young monkeys to a roof where the canopy opened over the old courtyard and made them sit with their backs straight. Below, the troop argued over a dead parrot. Above, leaves trembled with the passage of something heavier. The first warning sign was 2 fingers pressed to the eyes. The second was a flat hand lowered toward the stones. Caesar gave both. The 6 froze badly, knees shaking and tails twitching. A moment later, a leopard crossed the branch above them. It looked down, found no easy movement, and continued toward noisier prey. One of the young monkeys broke silence to point after it. Caesar struck the stone beside her hand, not her fingers. She flinched. He waited until she looked at him, then repeated the sign for watch. Her face changed when she understood that the correction was about the leopard, not Caesar's pride. They practiced until the sun moved behind the western trees. Stop became a palm. Come became two fingers curled inward. Danger became a claw drawn across the throat. The signs were not elegant. They were visible through leaves and useful when a voice would carry to a predator. When the troop below began another shrieking chase, Caesar led his six along a wall and made them cross the roof without disturbing a single hanging vine. The first attempt ended with 3 monkeys falling into a pile of old bricks. The second ended with 1. On the third, they moved like a thought shared between bodies. Caesar sent them down together. The 6 entered the courtyard, touched the marked stones, and waited. Their restraint made the rest of the Bandarlog stare. Caesar pointed from the silent group to the screaming crowd, then closed his fist. The first sign that meant command had been understood without a voice. The silent hand drills created their first accident when a monkey misread danger as asterisk throw. A stone left the roof. It struck another monkey below. The injured male collapsed with blood running from his scalp. Every trainee froze. Caesar's first instinct was anger. He crushed it. The mistake mattered more. He climbed down. The injured monkey was conscious. Sura pressed cloth to the wound. Caesar looked at the thrower. Young, terrified. He held both hands out. Show. The monkey repeated the sign he thought he had seen. Throw. Caesar looked toward Raku, who had sent the signal. Raku repeated. Danger. The difference was 1 angle of the wrist. Too small. The design was bad. Caesar changed both immediately. Danger became 2 fingers to eyes, followed by palm down. Throw became full arm snap. No confusion. The injured monkey needed rest, not punishment theater. The thrower spent the afternoon practicing with Caesar until the distinction survived exhaustion. That evening, Caesar assembled every sign user. He showed the bloodied cloth. Then the 2 old gestures. Then the new. No speech about guilt. The evidence was enough. The troop became more careful with signals because a sign had finally hurt someone. Caesar hated lessons that needed blood. He hated pretending they did not sometimes. The next test came from weather. Fog rolled through the ruins so thick that hand signals vanished beyond 3 body lengths. The silent system failed completely. Raku began shouting. Caesar let him. A rule should not survive after its conditions disappeared. They created sound signals for low visibility. 1 knock, stop. 2, regroup. 3, rapid, danger. Long scrape, retreat. The first time fog and danger came together, the system worked. A boar entered through an open path. The tower gave 3 rapid knocks. Monkeys on the roof dropped flat. Ground group moved behind stone. The boar wandered through without triggering a panic. Nobody threw. The injured monkey from the earlier accident watched from the alcove. His bandage had dried brown. He lifted the new danger sign. Caesar answered. The moment meant more than apology. The system had changed because he was hurt. His pain had become prevention instead of only memory. Caesar carved both old signs on a discarded stone and marked them with a slash. Do not use. He kept the stone instead of smashing it. He kept the stone so new trainees could see why those gestures were forbidden. Sura touched the scar on the injured male's head weeks later, then pointed to the old sign stone. Memory. Caesar nodded. The Bandarlog had once forgotten every lesson by afternoon. Now 1 mistake had survived long enough to change language. The fog signals created a problem with imitation. A group of children learned 3 rapid knocks meant danger. They used it during a game. Every nearby guard responded. No threat. Raku wanted harsh punishment. Caesar looked at children. They had learned signal exactly. They did not understand cost. He made them help reset all positions and carry message to each guard. False danger. Then explained alarm belongs to everyone. A false signal spends attention. The next time real danger comes, people may hesitate. Children understood through tired legs better than lecture. They created practice version, 3 knocks followed by a 4th soft tap. Drill. Real alarm remains 3 only. Children could practice the signal without confusing it with a real alarm. The 4th soft tap remained the practice marker for every later exercise. The first drill with practice marker revealed half guards still reacted as real. Training found ambiguity. They improved. Caesar began separating simulation signals from real ones across systems. For later drills, Caesar marked practice spear points with paint so no one could mistake a simulation for a live attack. Fire drills. Gate tests. The principle prevented one dangerous habit, people learning to ignore alarms because exercise is indistinguishable. The monkeys did not call it alarm fatigue. They simply complained, too many knocks. Caesar listened. The first guard rotation, using only hand signals, failed at sunset because one watcher could not see. The sun sat behind the tower, turning every hand into a dark shape. Stop looked like watch. Come looked like bring. The watcher guessed. He left position 3 minutes early. Nothing attacked. Caesar still called everyone back. The problem was lighting, not discipline. They tested colored cloth. Red strip around wrist. White palm ash. Too visible to enemies. They tried position-based signals instead. Arm high, arm low, both hands crossed. Silhouette. Night remained different. At night, the guards relied on touch and knock signals instead. One language split by condition. Raku complained, too many. Sura said, better than one wrong. Caesar agreed. From then on, every signal system had to survive the conditions in which it would actually be used. No single elegant signal worked in every condition. During rain, cloth fails. Fog, hands fail. Noise, voices fail. The troop learned redundancy not as abstract theory, but as different bodies repeating same intent through different channels. A child later asked why danger had 3 signals. Because jungle can take one. The answer pleased Caesar. Not everything needed his phrasing to be true. Asterisk Chapter 5. Stone before the loudest voice. The challenge came over a mango. Koro, the broadest adult male in the cold lairs, snatched it from a child and threw the peel at Caesar's chest. His followers made the old laughing bark. They expected a chase, a wrestling match, or a louder insult. Caesar gave them none of those things. He walked to the ruin's edge where stone had split under ancient heat. A black shard lay in the dust, sharp enough to open skin. Caesar tested it against a fallen branch and watched the edge bite into the wood. Koro kept laughing until the branch separated with a clean crack. You found a rock, Koro said, as if words could make the object harmless. Caesar held the shard upright. I found a choice. The Bandar-log could not understand every word, but they understood the pause after it. Caesar wrapped the handle with a strip of vine, then pressed the cutting edge into the shaft. His fingers bled. He did not hide the blood or stop working. Koro lunged before the spear was finished. Caesar stepped aside and let the larger body crash into the wall. The shard scratched Koro's shoulder. It was a shallow wound, but the sight of red on a stone tool turned the laughter into uneasy clicks. The young monkeys copied Caesar's grip with sticks. 2 snapped theirs. One cut his palm and began screaming. Caesar took the bloodied hand, washed it at the cistern, and made the injured monkey watch the others finish. Pain was not permission to abandon the lesson. It was part of the lesson. At dusk, Coro stood on the central pillar and called Caesar a frightened child. Caesar set the new spear across his knees and looked up. He had learned the Alpha's strength, his followers, and the distance between the pillar and the nearest drop. Tomorrow, the old voice would demand an answer. Caesar would give it one that could be remembered. Coro did not die immediately after the spear lesson. For 2 days, he walked the ruins with the shallow cut on his shoulder and a humiliation far deeper than the wound. His followers watched Caesar more carefully. That was worse than open challenge. Coro began speaking instead. He makes you carry. He takes your food. He gives fruit to the weak. Each complaint was true. That made them useful. Caesar listened from the upper ledge while pretending not to. Some monkeys agreed. Coro asked why the strong should not eat more, why children should receive fruit before males who could fight, and why anyone should spend daylight moving stone while the forest still offered branches and fruit. Caesar could answer by force. He needed an answer stronger than force. He called a work halt. The troop gathered, expecting punishment. Instead, Caesar opened the stores. One basket. He dumped the contents onto stone, then pointed to the whole troop. 1 day. Sura counted roughly. Not enough if everyone ate freely. Coro laughed. Forest. Caesar pointed beyond the wall. Rain had stripped fruit from several nearby trees. The troop could forage farther, but every extra mile increased exposure to predators and humans. Caesar gave Coro the choice. You lead food group. Coro stopped laughing. A leader complaining about rationing could prove another method. Coro accepted because refusing in front of followers would cost face. He took 12 monkeys into the forest. Caesar gave no extra guard. They returned late. 2 injured. 1 missing. Food barely covered what they had eaten en route. The missing monkey arrived after dark alone, bitten by something small and furious. Coro's followers were quieter. Caesar did not gloat. He placed the gathered fruit into the central basket and gave Coro his earned portion. Coro stared. You knew. I suspected. You let them hurt. I let you test your claim. That answer angered Sura too. She confronted Caesar after. Could die. Yes. Bad. Perhaps. Sura slapped the stone wall. She did not have language for the rest. Caesar did. A ruler could become monstrous by designing failures that others paid for. He had to distinguish experiment from using lives as proof. Coro's route had been risky, but not suicidal. Still, Caesar had accepted injury to teach a point. He remembered. The next time someone proposed an alternative, Caesar required risk stated first. Not hidden. Long before a formal council existed, every proposed alternative had to state its risks openly. Coro noticed the change. He never thanked Caesar. He did, however, stop calling the ration basket theft. His challenge changed shape from food to authority. That was more honest. The spear challenge also forced Caesar to decide what happened when a leader lost. Coro's followers had assumed defeat meant exile from food. That was the old pattern: lose status, lose protection. Caesar rejected it before Coro's final attack. A monkey could lose rank without losing membership. He said so publicly. Coro laughed. Then rank means nothing. It means responsibility. Food is responsibility. Sometimes. Coro saw weakness. If followers remained fed after abandoning him, his power to keep them depended less on fear. Several drifted toward Caesar before final fight. Not because they liked Caesar, because switching sides no longer meant starvation. That reduced bloodshed. After Koro died, his followers retained ordinary rations and work assignments. One was excellent climber. Raku wanted exclude from guard. Caesar gave probation, not permanent ban. The climber eventually became East Tower Watcher. This angered victims of Koro. But competence plus changed behavior could restore trust over time. The state could not afford hereditary guilt inside one generation. That principle made later rebellions survivable. The thick-shouldered male's death changed command, but not every relationship around him had to die too. Chapter 6, The First Silence. Koro attacked at dawn when the troop was hungry and the stone yard was slick with rain. He came down from the pillar with both hands raised, expecting the smaller body to meet him in a contest the Bandar-log already understood. Caesar backed toward the broken stair and let Koro believe the retreat was fear. At the last step, Caesar planted the spear butt against stone. Koro's weight carried him onto the point. The shard entered below the ribs and stopped. For an instant, the Alpha remained upright, staring at the weapon as though it had betrayed the rules. Caesar caught his shoulder and lowered him instead of allowing the body to tumble into the crowd. The cold layers went quiet. Not completely. The injured Alpha gasped. Rain struck leaves, and a baby monkey whimpered behind a wall, but the old collective noise had vanished. Every face looked at Caesar. He pulled the spear free, wiped it on wet earth, and faced the troop with blood on his hands. Koro tried to rise. Caesar put one foot against his chest. "You made them hungry for your amusement," he said. "You took what you could not defend. You taught them that the loudest hand was the strongest." He looked at the troop. "That lesson ends here." He gave Koro water before the final breath left him. It was not mercy. It was a demonstration that Caesar decided who received even the things a dying body needed. When Koro stopped moving, Caesar covered him with a woven mat and ordered 4 monkeys to carry him beyond the living quarters. No one challenged the order. Caesar raised the spear and closed his fist. The 6 answered first, then the older females. Then, one by one, the rest of the Bandar-log lowered their eyes. The first silence had not been imposed by a shout. It had been purchased with a consequence no one could pretend not to understand. After Koro died, Caesar refused to sit on the pillar. The troop expected him to. That was where the loudest male had ruled. Sura pointed to it after the body was carried away. Caesar looked. No. He chose a flat stone near the center instead. Low enough that children could approach. High enough to be seen. The choice confused everyone. Koro's pillar remained empty for weeks. That emptiness became a statement without Caesar intending it. Leadership had moved, not disappeared. The first case brought before him was stupid. 2 monkeys claimed the same obsidian flake. One had found the stone. The other had shaped it. Both had bled on it. Caesar examined. Who uses? Neither had a task requiring knife. That made ownership purely status. He gave it to the tool store. Both furious. Then assigned them to make 2 new flakes together. They failed 3 times. On the 4th, produced usable pair. Caesar gave 1 each. The dispute resolved through production rather than judgment. Sura liked. Raku did not. King should choose. I did. You made more. Better. The same solution appeared again whenever production could replace a fight over scarcity. Where possible, solve scarcity before deciding who deserves scarcity. Not always possible. Food during drought and water during later crises would remain scarce, but tools, sleeping space, and watch positions could often be expanded or redistributed. The troop began bringing Caesar fewer fights over objects once workshops could make replacements. Power shifted from possession to capacity. Coro had ruled by taking. Caesar wanted rule by making enough that taking became less profitable. That goal was larger than any spear. At night, he climbed the empty pillar once. From there, the whole cold layers looked small. He understood why Coro had liked it. Everyone below became shapes. Noise. Problems at distance. Caesar climbed down. He preferred the low stone. Coro's grave was not marked. That was Caesar's choice. Then a young monkey asked where he was. Caesar pointed beyond wall. The child went looking. Sura stopped him. The unmarked absence became a problem of its own. Even a bad leader had existed. Erasing location made history easier to simplify. Caesar went with Sura outside. Coro had been left beneath stones beyond living quarters. No ceremony. They placed one marker. Not honor. They carved only Coro's name and personal symbol. Caesar considered whether to carve the cause of Coro's death. Killed after attacking Caesar in challenge. Also exploited troop. A marker could become propaganda. He kept simple. Coro. Nothing else. Those who remembered could speak. Later, Naku visited. He sat by stones. Caesar saw from road, but did not follow. Private grief. Coro had harmed and still been friend to some. A state that forbade mourning enemies would force people to lie. Weeks later, someone left fruit. No punishment. Raku objected. He would steal. Dead. Raku had no answer. The grave became place where old life loyalists gathered sometimes. Caesar monitored only for plots, not grief. This distinction prevented memory from becoming illegal. Eventually, one meeting became political. They criticized work law. No violence. A passing guard overheard the criticism and brought it to Caesar. No spy or hidden listener had been needed. The gathering was political, not secret. Caesar said, "No action." The guard looked shocked. They hate. Allowed. The decision became the first precedent for allowing criticism without treating it as conspiracy. Coro's grave unintentionally gave dissent physical space. Caesar could close. Did not. When actual rebellion later formed, some planning happened elsewhere, not grave, partly because people knew simple criticism there was tolerated. A place for memory had reduced need to turn memory into conspiracy. Caesar learned cemeteries could be infrastructure too. Caesar's refusal to occupy Coro's pillar eventually encouraged children to climb it. The first one fell halfway. Caught vine. No injury. Sura demanded ban. Caesar looked at pillar. It was structurally cracked from old challenge. The issue was not symbolism. It was hazard. They closed until repaired. After the repairs were inspected, Caesar reopened the pillar. No reason a dead leader's seat needed sacred restriction. Children climbed under rules. Adults too. The pillar became lookout platform, not throne. Coro's old status physically repurposed. Naku noticed. Your kingdom eats old kings. Stone was useful. That was Caesar's answer. The pillar became useful infrastructure rather than a shrine to Coro. Different objects can deserve different treatment. No rule that every relic preserved or destroyed. The first guard assigned there was one of Coro's former followers. He laughed when told. Now I stand where he sat. Watch east. The monkey did. The pillar stopped, belonging to memory alone. That helped the troop move on without pretending Koro never existed. The first real test of Koro's former followers came during a storm watch. A tree fell across the north approach. The noise woke half the troop. Raku sent 3 guards. One of them had followed Koro for years. He reached the tree first and found a frightened young monkey trapped beneath branches, not crushed, but unable to climb out. The old habits of the bandar log would have created a crowd. Instead, the guard gave the stop sign to the 2 behind him. Then the lift sign. They moved the branch together. No Caesar. No Raku. The child came free. Later Sura reported the event because the guard had followed the exact rescue sequence he once mocked. Caesar did not reward him specially. The guard already received something more important. No one treated his old allegiance as evidence he would fail now. Koro's faction had not been dissolved into enemies. Some became reliable simply because the conditions around reliability changed. The former guard eventually asked for a new name cord. Not a new name, only a new duty symbol. He chose North Watch. Sura tied. The old pillar, grave, and memories remained. The old pillar, the grave, and the memories remained, but the former guard now had a future beyond them. Caesar began understanding that defeating a leader and absorbing a population were different tasks. The first could happen in seconds. The second required allowing people to become more than the side they had once chosen. Chapter 7. Work, learn, obey, eat. Caesar did not celebrate Koro's death. Celebration would teach the troop that power existed for the pleasure of the one holding it. Instead, he placed 4 stones in a line before the gathered monkeys and made the youngest member of the 6 touch each one. Work, learn, obey, eat. The words were simple enough to sign with one hand. Work was a palm pressing downward. Learn was 2 fingers touching the temple. Obey was a closed fist against the chest. Eat was an open hand brought to the mouth. Caesar repeated the sequence until the courtyard stopped treating it as a trick. A hungry male reached for the fruit pile before the final sign. Caesar moved the basket away. The male bared his teeth. Caesar pointed to the stones, then to the empty space in front of the basket. The male understood the immediate part. No work, no food. He carried rubble for an hour with a face full of hatred. The first worker to finish a stack received a full portion. Caesar made the worker divide it with the smallest child in the line. The child stared at the older monkey, then ate. Reward had to teach cooperation as clearly as punishment taught fear. An old female asked why the leader should eat before anyone else. Caesar answered by placing his own portion on the ground. The hand that gives an order must carry the heaviest stone, he said. He carried until his shoulder trembled, then ate only after the last basket was covered against rain. By night, the law had become more than 4 signs. It was a bargain written in empty stomachs and visible stores. The bandar log still disliked Caesar. That was acceptable. They had begun to understand that chaos no longer decided who ate. The 4-sign law failed its first child. A young monkey named Tika broke her wrist, falling from a half-built wall. She had worked. She had learned. She had obeyed. Now she could not work. The food line hesitated. One older male pointed at the stones. Work. Learn. Obey. Eat. Tika could not perform the first. Taken literally, the sequence would deny her food. Caesar saw the trap immediately. A rule simple enough to teach had become simple enough to become cruel. He moved the first stone, placed it beside the others instead of in sequence. Work was one path to share, not proof of worth. Children. Injured. Keepers. Guards recovering from night watch. They all needed food for reasons beyond immediate labor. The older male objected. Then lazy. Possible. Some would exploit. Caesar accepted. A system that never risked being cheated usually punished genuine weakness first. He created a new sign. Unable. 2 hands open. Not shame. Condition. Sura managed. Anyone claiming unable was checked by 2 others. Tika received food. The next day, 3 healthy monkeys claimed unable. Caesar inspected each claim himself before assigning any consequence. 1 had sore foot. 1 lied. 1 genuinely exhausted from night watch not logged correctly. 3 claims. 3 answers. The liar lost ration portion and did work. The sore foot moved to light duty. The exhausted guard slept. The process took longer than a strict rule. The 4 stones remained. But Caesar added a 5th mark beside them, need. The troop hated the ambiguity. Caesar did too. Yet the first civilization law had grown because a child fell. Weeks later, Tika returned to work with wrist stiff. She could no longer climb as fast. Sura moved her to counting baskets. Tika excelled. The injury changed role, not belonging. That became one of Caesar's quietest victories. The work law eventually distinguished contribution from obedience. A monkey could work hard and still disagree. Naku became proof. He carried more stone after rebellion than many loyalists. At Food Line, 1 guard tried move him back because disobedient. Sura stopped. Worked. The guard pointed Caesar's fist sign, obey. Sura looked at 4 stones. The sequence itself implied food required ideological obedience. Caesar saw. Danger. He changed the old sign for obedience into a narrower command. Follow the safety rule or assign direction while the task is active. Too complex for 1 gesture. They separated civic membership from task command. Work. Learn. Share. Eat. Obedience moved to specific contexts. Guard line, fire room, evacuation. No general, obey king as food condition. The change broke the old connection between belonging and personal obedience to Caesar. Some loyalists felt betrayed. Coro's old system had been personal dominance. Caesar had accidentally preserved it in simplified law. He removed. The 4 stones became different. Work when able. Learn what role requires. Share common burdens. Eat because you belong and stores permit. Still ration rules. Not utopia. But belonging no longer depended on obedience as identity. The troops' chant changed slowly. Children learned new faster than adults. Caesar kept old stone in archive. Evidence that even founding law could be wrong. Asterisk Chapter 8. Boot camp at the cold lairs. Boot camp began in the courtyard before sunrise. Caesar split the troop by ability rather than age. Climbers on the upper wall, carriers near the rubble, watchers along the eastern trees, and children beside adults who could correct a grip without turning the lesson into a game. The first drill was climbing. Each monkey had to reach a marked branch, touch the red cord, and return without shaking leaves. The Bandar-log treated the exercise as a race until Caesar removed the fastest climber from the line for landing loudly. Speed that announced itself was only a faster form of failure. The second drill was silence. Caesar walked between the ranks carrying a stone. Anyone who spoke or laughed joined him. By mid-morning, 20 monkeys were carrying stones in a widening circle, and the ones who remained behind them had discovered that obedience could be contagious. 1 young male threw his load down and ran. Caesar did not chase. He sent 2 scouts to close the north path and waited by the food basket. The runaway returned at sunset after finding the forest less generous than the troop. Caesar made him sleep outside the wall and gave his ration to the monkey with the bloodiest hands. In the afternoon, Caesar taught formation. 3 bodies made a line, 2 lines made a wedge. A spear was useful only when the hands holding it agreed about where its point belonged. The first attempt collapsed when a nervous monkey jabbed backward. Caesar struck the ground and made them repeat the turn until no one stood behind a blade. At dusk, the troop was exhausted enough to stop pretending exhaustion was an insult. Caesar walked past their swollen fingers and raw feet. The cold lairs sounded different, fewer random cries, more deliberate calls between watchers. It was not civilization. It was the first day in which effort had a shape. Boot camp's first graduation was ruined by rain. Caesar had planned a final route through the eastern trees. Climb. Silent crossing. Formation. Return. The sky opened before dawn. Branches became slick. Visibility shrank. Half the course turned dangerous. Raku wanted to continue. We trained. Caesar looked at wet bark. Training is not command to ignore weather. Raku bristled. Cancelling felt like weakness. The young trainees looked relieved and disappointed. Caesar changed test. Inside walls. No climb. Carry injured dummy. Signal through noise. Move supplies while water flooded lower yard. Real conditions. No prestige. More useful. The first team failed because they saved the dummy and abandoned food basket. The second saved food and left the injured monkey exposed to rain. The third divided. 1 carrier. 1 cover. 2 supplies. Finished. Caesar did not rank fastest. He ranked completion without avoidable loss. Raku objected again. War not slow. Dead faster. That ended. After rain, trainees expected badges. Caesar had none. Sura tied simple cord around each wrist. Same cord used for work teams. No elite mark. Their graduation meant they could be trusted with more responsibility, not elevated above others. One trainee asked, "Better than old troop?" Caesar looked at muddy courtyard. No. The monkey frowned. Better than yesterday. That answer spread. Caesar wished he could stop good sentences becoming slogans. Too late. Children repeated asterisk better than yesterday while sweeping. He tolerated. The first graduates immediately learned how fragile status was when 2 were assigned refuse ditch. They complained. Sura pointed at cords. Responsibility. No glamour. Boot camp became institution because it did not end with applause. It ended with people going to work. The first boot camp instructor other than Caesar failed because he copied Caesar's tone instead of his method. Raku stood before recruits and shouted every correction. The recruits obeyed faster. They learned less. During silent route test, none could explain why leaves mattered. They only waited for Raku's face. Caesar stopped session. Why quiet? One recruit looked at Raku. Caesar asked Raku. Predator. Then teach that. Raku's pride hurt. He had believed authority itself was teaching. Caesar reassigned him to demonstrate mistakes first. Raku hated. But he learned. He deliberately stepped on dry branch. Showed sound carry. Then recruits tried. Education improved. Sura introduced peer correction. 2 recruits watch each other. Caesar worried bullying. Rules, correction names action, not person. Leaf moved, not you are stupid. Crude but useful. The old troop, insulted constantly. Separating mistake from identity, changed tone. Not softness. Precision. A recruit could fix noisy landing without defending worth. Boot camp became less Caesar-shaped. Only then could the institution outlive him. Asterisk Chapter 9. Signs for danger and fire. A language that could survive leaves and rain needed more than commands. Caesar sat with Ash on a flat stone and drew the first symbols while the troop crowded around him. Most of them treated the marks as another object to steal. He broke the stone in half and kept the unmarked piece for a demonstration. Danger was a claw, food was a cupped hand, stop was a flat palm, climb was 2 fingers rising, throw was an arm snapping forward, fire was fingers opening and closing like a living flame, enemy was a pointed hand followed by the throat sign, obey was the fist against the chest. He made each sign happen before the event it named. When a branch cracked beyond the eastern wall, Caesar gave danger, stop, and watch in sequence. The guards lowered themselves. A wild boar pushed through the brush, found the quiet ruins, and turned away. The young monkeys looked at Caesar as if he had commanded the animal itself. He pointed to the watchers instead. They had done the work. A child confused food and fire near the cooking hollow. Caesar slapped the bowl from his hands before the ember touched dry leaves. The child cried. Caesar knelt, showed the flame consuming a twig, then placed a cool stone beside it. Useful did not mean safe. Every sign needed a consequence behind it. By evening, messages moved from tower to tower without a spoken word. Enemy to the east, climb to the roof, stop at the cistern, bring stones. The signs were still slow, and half the troop forgot them when hungry, but the message arrived before Caesar himself did. He gave the troop one final sign, remember. He tapped his temple, then pointed to the marks cut into the wall. Memory could live in hands, stone, and repeated action. That was how a scattered troop became something that could learn from yesterday. The sign for asterisk remember was the hardest to teach because it pointed at something invisible. Caesar tried, tapping the temple. Too similar to learn. He tried pointing backward. The monkeys looked behind themselves. He tried touching a scar. Memory lived in marks. The troop began using objects as reminders. Red cord on broken bridge. White stone beside safe water. Black branch near human trail. The jungle filled with quiet language. A new problem appeared when a red warning cord remained after the bridge was repaired. Travelers avoided a safe route for days. Old warning became wrong. Caesar found the cord. Angry. Not because someone forgot. Because his system had no way to expire a warning. They needed a way to date the warnings, but the monkeys had no calendar. Use sun notches. 3 marks. After 3 dawns, warnings must be checked. If still danger, renew. If not, remove. Sura took charge. Sura formed the first maintenance patrol whose task was to inspect old warnings rather than search for enemies. They found 7 outdated marks in 1 week. 1 false wolf trail. 1 dried pool marked safe. The cold layers had learned memory. Now it had to learn forgetting. They were not erasing history. Updating current guidance. Caesar carved old marks into archive wall after removal. Past danger remained known. Current path stayed clear. He trained every scout to keep the 2 kinds of memory separate. A mark tells what someone once believed, not what the world guarantees now. Raku repeated that badly. The system grew. The first long-distance sign tower was built from hollow logs. Drum beats carried farther than hands. 1 beat north, 2 south, 3 return. The danger pattern used a separate rhythm. At first, storms echoed and confused. A thunderclap sounded like one. Scouts moved wrongly. They added call and response. Tower sends. Next tower repeats. Origin confirms. Slower. More reliable. During real emergency, delay mattered. A leopard entered east. First tower signaled danger. Second repeated. Origin confirmed. By then leopard moved. Still guards prepared before arrival. The system worked. Then a malicious monkey could send false. So tower operators paired. A war or danger signal required 2 operators. Routine 1 operator. This mirrored fire. No single impulsive hand starts mobilization. One night, Raku wanted immediate alert after hearing tiger roar. No visual. He ordered danger. Operator asked second confirmation. Raku furious. Caesar backed operator. The tiger roar was distant, no approach. No mobilization. The tower rule constrained military captain. The communication network became authority of its own, procedural, not personal. Repeated calls, corrected false alarms, and disciplined relay practice allowed messages to reach the farthest column without Caesar carrying them himself. The watch drums reached a distant elephant herd before any formal alliance existed. A distant herd heard danger pattern and changed route. Hathai later asked what it meant. Caesar demonstrated. The elephant could not reproduce precise drum easily, but trunk calls carried farther. They mapped one trunk call to major regional danger, not routine patrol. The trunk call became a regional emergency signal shared beyond the ape towers. The threshold had to remain high. No ape drum would summon an elephant herd for an ordinary local problem. Only wildfire, mass human threat, flood. High threshold. The first false major signal happened when a drum frame broke and rolled down steps, striking itself in pattern. Hathai's herd moved. Embarrassing. Caesar apologized. They added a distinctive opening sequence that could be produced only by a deliberate operator. No accidental. Hathai appreciated. Regional emergency communication became cooperative before full political alliance. A system can connect parties before trust fully formed if signal meaning narrow enough. That lesson later helped water and war coalitions. Asterisk Chapter 10. Stone Edges and Bloodied Hands. The first tool-making lesson ended with blood. Caesar placed river stone, flint, obsidian, and straight branches in separate circles and told the troop to examine them before touching anything. 3 monkeys grabbed the black volcanic glass at once. 2 cut their palms. The third dropped it on his foot. Caesar cleaned the wounds in silence. He did not forbid the material. Obsidian held an edge that ordinary stone could not. A civilization that feared every sharp thing would remain prey. He wrapped the injured hands, then made their owners sit beside him while he struck the stone with a hammer rock at the correct angle. A thin flake sprang away. Caesar caught it in a strip of bark and set it into a split stick. The result was ugly, but it cut Vine with one pull. The troop gathered close. He passed the tool to the wounded male and made him cut only under supervision. The male's fear became concentration. Spears came next. The point had to be centered, the shaft straight, and the binding tight enough to survive impact. Every flaw appeared when the monkeys tested them against a rotten log. Some points shattered. One shaft spun backward and lodged in a wall beside a laughing observer's ear. Caesar made the maker retrieve it. Then he made the whole troop examine the crack that had caused the failure. "The weapon tells the truth," he said. "Your hand does not." The lesson made them slower. Slowness was acceptable when it produced fewer injuries. At sunset, 10 serviceable spears leaned against the inner wall, and 3 obsidian knives rested in Caesar's guarded store. The monkeys stared at them with hunger, fear, and desire. Caesar assigned a keeper to each tool. Ownership had begun as responsibility, not permission to wave a blade at a rival. Obsidian storage created a theft problem before it created an army. The knives were valuable, sharp, small, easy to hide. One disappeared. Caesar shut the tool room. No collective punishment. He counted. 3 keepers had access. 1 child had been seen nearby. Raku wanted search sleeping alcoves. Caesar refused immediate. Search everyone, and the whole troop learns privacy disappears when leader loses property. Instead, ask. The keepers denied. The child cried before question. Suspicious. Not proof. Sura found the knife later under a work mat. A young craftsman had taken it to practice sharpening and hidden it because he feared punishment for damage. He had chipped the edge. Not theft for attack. Still unauthorized. Caesar brought him to store. Why hide? Bad. He meant the chip. Caesar showed broken tools shelf. Every workshop had failures. The craftsman had thought only perfect work could be shown. That belief encouraged concealment. Caesar changed. Practice tools marked separately. Mistakes reported without automatic punishment unless reckless. The chipped knife became practice blade. The craftsman helped repair. The child who had cried had been innocent, but afraid because searches under old troop often became beating. Caesar saw. Institutions inherited fear even when rules changed. He could not decree trust. He could make repeated outcomes. No search. No beating. The consequence was tied to the specific act. Over time, people would learn. The tool store gained a sign. Take with mark, return with mark. A simple checkout system. Raku laughed at bureaucracy without knowing word. Caesar did. He found it comforting. The workshop's first master was not Caesar. It was a female named Lecca who had broken 3 obsidian flakes and then discovered how to strike from below rather than above. Caesar watched her produce, edge cleaner than his. He handed over hammer stone. Teacher. Lecca stared. She had expected Caesar's method to remain official because King invented lesson. Instead, by evening, 20 monkeys copied hers. Caesar's old technique remained for certain stones. Plural methods. The workshop improved. Lecca created sorting by raw material. River stone for hammers. Obsidian for edges. Bone for needles. Hardwood for shafts. She also created rules Caesar disliked. No one takes raw obsidian without workshop keeper. He worried centralization. But injuries were high. He agreed with a peel path. A hunter needing emergency blade could request. The first abuse came from Lecca herself. She refused Naku material because she disliked him after rebellion. Naku complained. Council investigated. No safety reason. Lecca reprimanded. Access decision overturned. She did not lose mastery. A skilled person can misuse authority without becoming useless. Consequences targeted. Naku received material. He made terrible knife. Lecca laughed. Then taught him. The workshop became one of first institutions where expertise, not Caesar's rank, controlled immediate decisions. He could override. Rarely. One day he tried. A spear shipment needed fast. Lecca said wood too wet. Caesar wanted dry near fire quickly. She refused. Crack. He ordered one test. Shaft dried fast. Looked fine. They struck. Split. Caesar accepted. No badge. Lecker nodded. No triumph. The troop saw King lose to Wood. Later, when war demanded hundreds shafts, workshop could scale because standards belonged to people who understood, not ruler urgency. The first line of defense had been obsidian cuts. The deeper defense was craftsmen allowed to say no. Lecker's workshop eventually invented repair tags. Not because Caesar requested, because broken tools kept returning to wrong place. A red vine meant dangerous. Yellow meant repairable. White meant practice. A tool without tag assumed ready. The system failed when a child moved tags for decoration. 3 dangerous blades reached training rack. No injury because keeper checked. Lecker was furious. She wanted children banned from workshop entirely. Caesar asked whether all children needed access. But apprentices did. Banning every child would solve one incident by cutting off the next generation of craftsmen. They created bounded apprentice zone and tag board too high for toddlers. Physical design before punishment. The child helped paint floor marks. No beating. The tag spread to walls, carts, even water pots. Caesar worried over standardization. A red vine should not mean every danger everywhere if context differs. So common core meanings limited. Red, do not use until checked. Other local signs remain contextual. The civilization's visual language grew with governance. One outsider later misread yellow repair tag as ownership cord. The misunderstanding forced the workshop to explain its tags to visitors. Lecker hated explaining. She still did. The workshop became not only place where tools were made, but where the troop learned how objects could carry state information without becoming sacred. Every blade had history. Every repair left mark. Nothing was perfect because King approved. Chapter 11, Hunger Learns Rank. Food became political the moment Caesar stopped allowing the fastest thief to eat first. He had the troop gather every mango, root, egg, and strip of meat into the shaded hall. The pile looked generous until he divided it by bodies, infants, injured workers, guards, and the stores needed for tomorrow. The old habit answered with outrage. A heavy male tried to hide 2 figs under his arm. A female claimed the fruit she had found belonged to her alone. Caesar made both place the food in the central basket and stand at the end of the line. The rule was not that no one owned anything. The rule was that hunger could not rewrite the count. He appointed Sura, the young female who had first copied his signs, as storekeeper. She could remember which basket held roots and which held fruit, and she had no cousins in the loudest faction. Her hands shook when Caesar gave her the cord of office. He made the troop see the choice and live with it. A day's ration went first to the children, then the wounded, then the patrols who had spent the night outside. Workers received food after the morning count. Caesar ate near the end. When a guard complained that leaders should be strongest, Caesar pointed to the empty place where a dead guard would have stood. Strength was not a reason to consume the future. The consequence arrived by afternoon. 3 lazy monkeys skipped stone work and expected the evening basket. Sura denied them. They appealed to Caesar. He asked what they had contributed. They pointed to their presence. Caesar sent them to clear the refuse ditch in darkness, then allowed them half portions. The troop slept uneasily with full stomachs and fewer private hoards. Caesar listened to their mutters from the wall. Food had made rank visible. That would create resentment, but invisible rank had already been killing them. At least this hunger had rules it could argue with. Sura discovered that food counts could lie, even when nobody stole. The first sign was mold. 2 baskets of roots looked full from above. The bottom layer had gone soft after rain seeped through the roof. The morning count said enough food for 3 days. The real count was closer to 2. Caesar stared at the baskets. No thief. No laziness. A storage failure. The troop had begun trusting numbers because numbers stayed still longer than memory. Now the number itself was wrong because the condition underneath had changed. Sura looked furious with herself. I counted. Correct. Bad count. Correct. She expected punishment. Caesar lifted one rotten root. Did you know? No. Then we fixed storage. The storekeepers moved every basket. They raised the floor and stone blocks, cut vents near the roof, separated wet roots from dry fruit. A monkey who had once hidden figs suggested hanging baskets where air could pass underneath. They tried. Worked. Then rats arrived and exposed a new failure. The troop laughed when Caesar found one chewing through a hanging basket. He did not. They built smooth hanging cords rats could not climb easily and added night inspection. Every improvement created another obligation. The store became a living system instead of a pile. Sura started recording not just quantity, but condition. Dry. Wet. Damaged. Eat first. Reserve. A child asked why bruised fruit got eaten before clean. Because clean lasts. The child thought, then started sorting correctly. Caesar saw education happening in work rather than formal lesson. He liked that. The harder problem came with meat. A foraging patrol found a recently killed antelope abandoned near a leopard trail and brought back what could be salvaged. Too much to eat immediately. Heat. Flies. Caesar knew smoke preservation from memory, but the troop did not. They built rack above low fire. First batch cooked unevenly. Second burned. Third smoked. The smell drew predators and turned preservation into a security problem. They moved smokehouse downwind outside in a sleeping area with guarded approach. A system for food became architecture. The storekeepers grew in status. That worried Caesar. Control food means power. Sura had integrity now. Another storekeeper might not be as trustworthy. So he split roles. One group counts. One stores. One distributes. No person controls all three. Sura objected. Slow. Yes. Why? Because hunger makes good people dangerous. She stared, then nodded reluctantly. The first distribution dispute proved the point. A guard claimed double ration after night watch. Distributor agreed. Counter said the guard had only worked half shift because of injury. Argument. Instead of Caesar deciding, the watch marks settled. Half shift. Normal ration plus recovery portion. No shouting. Records. The guard still angry. But anger had somewhere to go besides the distributor's throat. Caesar watched from distance. He did not intervene. That was harder than intervening. Sura resolved. The troop continued. A civilization that required the king for every fig was not civilization. It was a long queue. By the end of the month, Caesar could leave the food hall for a day and return to correct counts. Not perfect. 2 baskets misplaced. 1 child overfed. 1 guard argued. No collapse. He considered that a greater victory than Koro's death. Nobody else did. That was fine. The Ration Council's first forecast failed because monkeys ate more during cold rain. Sura had calculated normal days. Cold bodies demanded energy. Stores fell faster. No theft. No waste. Consumption pattern changed. Caesar asked how to predict. Sura shrugged. Rain. They began weather-linked ration planning. Not cutting automatically. Reserve adjusted before cold season. This required seasonal memory. The Bandar log had never planned seasons. Older females knew fruit cycles intuitively. Caesar brought them to store counsel. One old female named Mira knew which trees failed after heavy bloom. She could not count well. Tikar could. Together forecast. Expertise plus measurement. The first year reserve improved. Caesar learned institutional knowledge often existed in people considered unserious by old hierarchy. The noisy old females had memory of fruit because they fed young. His early system could have ignored. He corrected. Mira became seasonal advisor, no formal cord at first. Then council gave woven leaf mark. She laughed at rank. Still attended. Food politics broadened beyond strong workers. Asterisk Chapter 12. Smoke on the patrol map. Asterisk. The first patrol carried no spears longer than their arms could manage. Caesar led Sura, the silent climber Raku, and two sisters who knew the canopy paths beyond the ruins. Their task was not to hunt. It was to return with a map in memory, marks in bark, and a report that another patrol could follow. They began at the dry stream bed and followed it east. Caesar noted edible reeds, soft banks that would collapse under weight, and a narrow crossing where a wolf could pass unseen. Raku wanted to chase a bright bird. Caesar caught his wrist and pointed to the smoke thinning above the southern trees. The smoke came from humans. It was not a campfire abandoned by chance. Too much white ash, too many cut branches, and a path pressed flat by feet. Caesar marked the route with 3 shallow cuts hidden beneath a leaf. The sisters learned the sign for people and repeated it without sound. At a pool beneath a banyan, they found wolf tracks over older tiger prints. Caesar measured the width of the paw, then the distance between steps. The wolves were moving in a disciplined line. They were not an immediate threat, but they belonged on the map. A patrol that knew only enemies was as blind as one that knew none. The return nearly failed when rain erased the soft bank markings. Sura remembered the turn because she had counted 7 red roots beside the water. Caesar made the whole group stop and repeat the route backward. Memory was not a talent to admire. It was a tool to test under pressure. They returned after dark with wet fur, 2 injured feet, and the first patrol map cut into bark. Caesar mounted it inside the eastern tower. The cold layers had gained more than information. They had gained a habit of looking beyond the next handful of fruit. The patrol map grew too large for one bark sheet. Sura wanted another wall. Caesar wanted a system. They cut the map into regions. North Water, South Human, East Tiger, West Ruins. Each patrol updated only its sector and then reported changes to the central wall. Immediately, errors appeared. One path existed on 2 maps with different names. A safe pool was marked in the east sector and dry in the north. Raku blamed scouts. The scouts blamed the map. Caesar brought both groups to the pool. Dry. The water had shifted after a fallen tree blocked a channel. No one lied. The map had been correct at different times. They needed dates again. Notches. Fresh marks darker. Old marks faded. They began scraping superseded roots rather than leaving all equally authoritative. The wall became scarred. Then human smoke changed. The southern charcoal pit expanded. Scouts reported 3 men. Another reported 7, because the observations had been made at different times. Caesar sent no raid. He sent observation at dawn and dusk. 3 workers by day. 7 appeared when the carts arrived, revealing a predictable pattern. The humans were not forming an army there. They were building production. That mattered more long-term. Iron tools, charcoal, road. Caesar marked the site not red enemy, but black industry. Raku disliked. Men enemy. Some. All. No. That answer made scouts uncomfortable. Categories were easier when everyone beyond the wall was hostile. Caesar refused easy. A patrol later found 2 human children gathering berries